April 27th, 1997. A young man walks through a sugarcane field on the outskirts of Medan, Indonesia, collecting weeds for his livestock. Something stops him. A mound of freshly disturbed earth, sitting awkwardly between the tall stalks. He presses a stick into the soil, pulls it back out, and raises it to his nose. The smell alone tells him something is deeply wrong. By midnight, police have pulled a recently discovered individual from the earth. Her name was Sri Kamala Dewi. She was 21 years old. She had gone to see a trusted local healer just 3 days earlier, hoping he could save her marriage. She never came home. What investigators would uncover beneath that field over the following weeks would send shockwaves across an entire nation. Not one victim, not 5, 42. The man responsible was not a stranger. He was the most trusted person in the village, and when police sat across from him, he did not deny it. He explained it, calmly, completely, without a trace of regret. To understand how a man reaches that point, you have to go back to the beginning. Ahmad Suradji was born on January 10th, 1949, near the city of Medan in North Sumatra. His father was a respected dukun in their community, a spiritual healer who people turned to when ordinary solutions failed. In rural North Sumatra, this was an entirely normal role. Indonesia's Muslim faith had long existed alongside older animistic traditions, and going to a dukun for a troubled marriage or a change in fortune was simply what people did. It was trusted. It was familiar. Suradji's father had built a life on that trust, but he passed away when Suradji was still young, and what followed was not the inheritance of that standing. It was years of hardship and repeated failure. His formal education ended at the elementary level. He worked as a cattle breeder. He was taken into custody multiple times for theft, including livestock theft, spending years moving in and out of the justice system with a reputation that made doors close rather than open. When he was finally out for the last time, he made a decision. He was finished with that version of himself. He wanted what his father had: authority, respect, a community that valued him. And so he became a dukun. He studied every document his father had left behind. He learned from elder spiritual practitioners in the region. He moved to a property on the outskirts of Medan, purchased land that included a sugarcane plantation, and opened his doors to the community. He also married 3 women, all sisters from the same family. This arrangement was unusual by local standards and caused significant tension within his family. His mother objected strongly and eventually was asked to leave the household. They did not reconcile. His first wife, Tumini, became deeply involved in the day-to-day operations of his practice. She welcomed clients, assisted with sessions, and over time played a role that would become relevant to investigators in 1997. By the mid-1980s, Suradji had built something genuinely impressive, a reputation as a skilled and trustworthy spiritual healer, known across surrounding villages, with a steady stream of clients who came to him for love rituals, beauty ceremonies, financial prayers, and personal guidance. He was generous with neighbors and visible at the mosque. In 1986, the community formally recognized him with the title Datuk, a marker of respect for a spiritual elder. That same year, 1986, everything shifted. According to Suradji's own testimony to police, he experienced a vivid and significant dream in 1986. In this dream, his deceased father appeared to him and gave him a clear directive. If he wanted to become a truly powerful spiritual healer, one with abilities beyond any ordinary dukun, he needed to complete a specific ritual. He needed to collect and consume the saliva of 70 young women who had passed away. Only then would the full scope of supernatural power be transferred to him. Suradji woke from this dream with the instructions fixed in his mind. He considered how to proceed. Waiting for 70 women to pass away from natural causes while somehow being present to collect their saliva was not a workable plan. It would take far too long. So he made a different calculation entirely. He would not wait. He had a goal. He had access to a steady stream of clients who trusted him completely. He had a large sugarcane field on his property where visibility was 0 after dark. And he had 11 years ahead of him in which not a single person would think to look in his direction. In 1986, the first of his clients did not return home. Understanding how Suradji operated for 11 years requires understanding the system he had built, because it was not sloppy or reactive. It was structured. A woman would arrive seeking help, most commonly for a troubled relationship, for better fortune, or for a beauty ritual. Suradji would collect his fee up front. His rates ranged between the equivalent of $200 and $400 per session, which was a significant sum in rural North Sumatra at that time. After the initial consultation inside his home, he would explain that the full ritual required a specific location and had to take place after dark. The sugarcane field. Tonight. And she must tell no one about her visit. Not a family member. Not a friend. If the secrecy was broken, the ritual would lose its power entirely. This instruction was not a red flag to the women who received it. Most of them were seeking help with deeply private matters, the kind of problems people do not openly discuss. Keeping a visit to a spiritual healer quiet felt natural. It even felt responsible. And so they came alone, told no one, and disappeared into the darkness of a sugarcane field where no one would be looking for them. At the field, Suradji would have already prepared a specific spot. He directed each woman to stand inside a prepared opening in the earth, while he filled the soil in around her, up to her waist. He told her this was a necessary part of drawing power from the ground, that she needed to remain still while the ceremony proceeded. Once she was not able to move, each woman was entirely at his mercy. Suradji used a length of electrical cable to end each client's life. He then collected the saliva from her mouth, believing this fulfilled the terms of the ritual his father's spirit had described. He removed each woman's clothing, believing this would accelerate decomposition. And then he buried each body completely, with one detail he maintained without variation. The head was positioned to face his house. He believed this orientation directed the spiritual power of each person back toward him. Those he targeted ranged in age from approximately 11 to 30 years old. They came from nearby villages and surrounding areas. Some were married women hoping to repair or protect their relationships. Some were seeking financial improvement. Some were in high-risk occupations, looking for spiritual protection or a larger client base. Suradji was selective. He understood that some disappearances would attract faster scrutiny than others. Women with fewer family connections, or those already living on the social margins, were less likely to generate immediate alarm. During periods when fewer clients came to him, he would arrange to bring in additional women himself, maintaining the pace of his ritual even when his regular flow of visitors was slow. There is one confirmed survivor. A woman who later spoke to investigators under the name Yanti described going to Suradji for a beauty ritual. During the initial consultation, he gave her a glass of water he had secretly treated as part of a preparatory step. When he then led her to the field and began placing her in the earth, something shifted for her. She pulled herself free and ran through the surrounding sugarcane, cutting herself on the sharp stalks but reaching safety. Out of fear and shame, she did not report what had happened. She stayed silent. And so Suradji continued. Sri Kamala Dewi was 21 years old. She and her husband were separated, and she wanted the marriage back. On the evening of April 24th, 1997, she hired a 15-year-old rickshaw driver named Andreas to take her to Suradji's home. Before she stepped out, she asked him to keep the trip quiet. She did not ask for a return pickup. 3 days later, she had not come home. On April 27th, 1997, a man passing through the sugarcane field near Suradji's property noticed a mound of recently disturbed soil between the stalks. He alerted the village chief. A group returned with lanterns and tools. When they pushed a stick into the mound and pulled it back, the odor that followed told them what was there. Around midnight, they located an individual without clothing, a recently discovered individual. Sri Kamala Dewi was identified through her mother's recognition of her feet. Her mother, who had been searching in desperation for 3 days, fainted when she arrived at the scene. Police arrived and began their investigation. Suspicion initially turned toward Sri Kamala Dewi's estranged husband, who was brought in for questioning. But investigators were careful and kept working. The 15-year-old told police exactly where he had dropped Sri Kamala Dewi on the night she disappeared, at the home of Ahmad Suradji. That one testimony redirected the entire investigation. Detectives also recalled that a few years earlier, another woman had been located in the same general area. That case had gone cold. It was now being reopened. Police went back through years of missing persons reports from across the region. The pattern that emerged was unmistakable. Multiple women who had vanished were known by at least one person in their lives to have been heading to see a dukun, specifically Suradji, before they disappeared. The same name, again and again. Armed with a warrant, police returned to Suradji's property and conducted a thorough search of his home. What they found inside removed any remaining doubt. Piles of women's clothing, handbags, jewelry, personal belongings belonging to multiple women. Among them, Sri Kamala Dewi's family identified her bracelet, her clothing, and other items she had carried the night she left home. Watches and jewelry, connected to at least 25 other women, were also recovered. Ahmad Suradji was formally detained on April 30th, 1997. Tumani was taken into custody alongside him. In the interrogation room, Suradji initially denied everything. Then the denials began to give way. He admitted to Sri Kamala Dewi's case, then to more. First 16, then the number grew. He ultimately confirmed 42 cases spanning 11 years. Each carried out in the same manner, each placement oriented with the head toward his house. He described the dream. He explained the ritual. He showed investigators the field, demonstrated his method using a mannequin, and led excavation teams to specific locations within the plantation. What followed was one of the most significant forensic excavations in Indonesian history. Using bulldozers alongside manual teams, investigators worked through the full expanse of the sugarcane field over several weeks. 42 sets of recovered individuals. Some were recent enough for partial identification. Others had fully broken down naturally into skeletal traces after years underground. Around 80 families from across the region came forward to report missing female relatives from the years in question. The community of Semayang was devastated. The man who had held the title of Datuk, the man they had sent their daughters and wives and sisters to see, had been responsible for something none of them had ever imagined possible. The trial of Ahmad Suradji opened on December 11th, 1997, at the Lubuk Pakam District Court in North Sumatra. It was an immediate national event. A 363-page indictment had been assembled over 7 months of investigation. The courthouse could not hold the number of people who wanted to attend. Tents were set up outside with television screens, so the overflow crowd could follow the proceedings live. Inside, Suradji sat quietly and retracted his earlier statements. He and Tumini both claimed their admissions had been extracted under pressure during interrogation. Spoken freely. This was not an unusual claim in Indonesia during that era, and the court took it under consideration. But the physical evidence was not built on those statements. 42 sets of recovered individuals had been found from his property. The personal belongings of those who had gone missing had been found inside his home. Dozens of families had placed their missing daughters on a path directly to his door. A documented reenactment had been conducted at the field. And a library of ritualistic materials recovered from his home aligned directly with the ritual he had described. Tumini was tried alongside her husband. Evidence established that she had been present during client consultations, had accompanied at least one of those who came to him toward the field, and had assisted in concealing evidence after the fact. 7 months of proceedings concluded on April 27, 1998. Exactly 1 year after Sri Kamala Dewi's was found in the field, 3 judges found Ahmad Suradji guilty on 42 counts of causing unlawful death. The sentence: capital punishment by state protocol. The courtroom responded with an eruption of sound from the gathered families. Suradji showed no visible reaction. He remained composed. Tumini received the same initial sentence. It was later reduced to lifelong incarceration through the appeals process. This decision was contested fiercely by the families those affected, including Sri Kamala Dewi's mother, who maintained that Tumini had been an active participant and deserved the same outcome as her husband. Suradji spent 10 years in state facility under a capital sentence while his legal appeals moved through the system. Each appeal was denied. During this period, those who interacted with him noted something that stayed with them. He did not express regret about what he had done. He expressed something closer to dissatisfaction, not at having been caught, but at having fallen short of his stated goal. He had aimed for 70. He had reached 42. That gap appeared to bother him more than anything else. Ahmad Suradji was informed on the morning of July 10, 2008, that his sentence would be carried out that afternoon. He was 59 years old. His one request was to see Tumini one final time before the sentence was executed. Authorities permitted a brief meeting. He was then taken outside and placed before a state execution unit of 12 men. Under Indonesian protocol, only 3 of the 12 assigned devices carry active rounds. The remaining 9 hold blanks. No individual member of the squad can be certain which type of round their weapon contained. A practice designed to distribute the weight of the moment across the group. The protocol was carried out. Ahmad Suradji passed away on July 10, 2008. Authorities attempted to lay him to rest in the public cemetery in Semayang village. More than 100 family members of those he had harmed arrived and refused to allow it. They made clear they would not let him rest on the same ground where the families of those he had harmed lived and mourned. The plan was canceled. His remains were transported approximately 50 kilometers away and interred quietly in a location kept away from public attention. A film about the case, Misteri Kebun Tebu, meaning Mystery of the Sugarcane Plantation, had already been released in 1997, while the legal proceedings were still underway. The writer, Joko Supriyanto, met with Suradji personally to gather material for the project. He later described Suradji as unremarkable in appearance, thin, calm, and entirely unbothered. In their conversation, Suradji reportedly told him that he had always understood he would eventually be found out. He continued anyway. Psychologist Irina Manauli, who assessed Suradji following his detention, concluded that he showed characteristics consistent with a complex behavioral condition. He was not assessed as someone disconnected from reality or unaware of his actions. He understood what he was doing. He simply did not carry the kind of internal check that prevents most people from acting on dangerous impulses. What made Suradji so extraordinary as a case study was not the scale alone. It was the invisibility. The women who came to him made entirely reasonable decisions. They went to a trusted, community-recognized healer with their personal problems, followed his instructions, and honored the secrecy he said was required. It reflects how completely and deliberately he had constructed the version of himself that the community saw. Sri Kamala Dewi was 21 years old. She wanted her marriage back. 41 other women wanted something: healing, love, security, hope. Their names and their stories deserve to be part of how this case is remembered. 42 women trusted the wrong person, and the world barely knew their names until it was too late. Share this video so their story reaches as many people as possible. Subscribe so you never miss a case that the world needs to understand. Stay aware of who you trust, and never hesitate to speak up when something does not feel right. Your instincts and your voice are more powerful than you realize.